So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can set up your corner preloads, essentially a corner weight balance, without needing that Hudy setup station or anything technical like that. You can simply do it using your existing ride height gauge. You'll need a droop gauge and some setup wheels, and a flat surface, probably a setup board. Follow this is important. You want to check first of all if there's any tweak. You can lay the car flat on the surface, your setup board preferably. If you want to keep the battery in the car as well, you want to keep it as it's ready to race, full weight, less the wheels, flat on the surface. So you want to check tweak. If we just go around the car and just press down, give it a bit of a tap on each corner of the chassis just to listen if the car's rocking at all. If it's tweaked, the car will essentially be diagonally twisted if it's been in a crash, and the car will rock like that. And if it does that, this is an automatic, so this one doesn't have the top deck on, but if it does have the top deck, you can loosen off the screws on the top deck, and then that should release. Normally it would release the car to get flat again. Then you just want to tighten those up, make sure the car's nice and flat, and then we're good to go to the next step. Alright, step 2, we now want to check the droop of the front and the rear suspension. Like I was saying before, this is super important. This is the most important, otherwise all your measurements for the next steps will be all out. So you just want to put your droop blocks under the chassis there. Make sure there's nothing hitting the droop blocks, no bits of tape, no screws hanging out, so it's completely flat. There we go. Car's nice and flat. We just want to check on the rear that it doesn't matter what the settings are, just as long as they're the same from right to left. So got 5 over there, and 5 over there. So we want to do that on the front and the rear. Make sure that they're exactly the same. Alright, so now we've checked the tweak and the droop. The car is now flat and the suspension travel is now even on the uplift. So now I want to show you that once that's set, most people just go ahead, set the ride height, and are more obsessed about the ride height than actually the preload or suspension corner balance and preload settings. So what I'm going to show you, something really simple here. So by picking up this corner, we're loading up that corner suspension. Okay, it's working. Same again, this corner makes that suspension work. It's diagonal force, like it is if you lift both of them up. The back takes some of the weight. Okay, so what happens here? I want to show you something. This is where you do not need a tweak station. By simply lifting up this body post here, front right hand corner, if you lifted this up, it's going to lift this wheel up. Okay, we want to lift it all the way up until this wheel breaks off the ground. At that point where it's just broken off the ground, you want to measure under this wheel with your ride height gauge. I'm just going to have a look now. So that is that's 5 millimeters. Okay. Now we're going to check the other side. Same theory. Just press down on the car, reset the suspension. If we check by pulling the suspension up by the body post here, all the way up until this wheel just comes off the ground. It's measuring 4.2 millimeters. Now what they're saying to us is that this side's coming up more than this side, okay? And the reason it's doing that is because there's not as much preload in this corner's suspension in the rear. So this is how you even it out. On automatics, you can adjust the ride height with the ride height screw. Okay, I'm going to do about maybe a quarter of a turn here, but on a 4 suspension generic chassis, you would do what I'm doing here. On a 4 suspension one, you would do by tightening in the suspension coil for the ride height. You'd probably want to do like a just a small turn at a time and recheck. So I'm going to do a quarter of a turn ride height screw adjustment, which is a preload as well. There we go. Reset that suspension. Let's check again. So by pulling up this body post all the way until this wheel comes off the ground. It's 4.6 millimeters. Okay, just check this side again. .4 to 4.6 millimeters. There we go. So the car just has a little tweak in the rear. The rear suspension's now, the preload is now even. Both sides are lifting up the same amount, which means the rear suspension. So both sides are lifting up the same amount now. Front and left, front and right, sorry. Front, right and left. Which means now the rear suspension is, it's now, the preload is now balanced. So we'll switch it around and check the rear. Okay, so we will just check in the front before. I've just turned it around. We're going to check the rear travel now, which will tell us, if we're checking this one for example, that'll tell us what the front right, and checking this one will tell us what the front left suspension is doing. So let's take a quick measurement, same theory. Just grab that by the body post all the way until this wheel over here comes off the ground. We've got 7 millimeters. All right, let's check the right side. Lift that up. Okay. got 8 millimeters right on the end of the ride height gauge there. So there is a bit of a difference. Now I'm going to work with this side. This side was 7 millimeters, which I'm going to wind out a little bit of ride height, wind out a little bit of preload from this front right suspension, which will allow the car to, the corner weight to travel more and this to come up further. So we want this to come up to 8 millimeters, okay? So by doing that, I'm just going to release a little bit of ride height, a little bit of preload. It's going to go about 1/4 of a turn out. And we'll check that again. We're now at about 7.5. At this point, I might try and get this one here from 8. I'll bring this one to 7.5. Don't want to make too many big adjustments on one corner. You kind of want to bring a balance to the car, so you don't want to just wind in one side big time. You kind of want to meet halfway with both sides, so the car's always just little adjustments to get it right rather than one corner getting everything. Let's recheck this one. Yeah, so it's about 8. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put a little bit of ride height and wind a bit of preload into the front left here. 1/4 of a turn. Recheck that. Wheels off the ground right there, and we're almost there. So that was just almost just under 8, so I'm just going to give that to you a little bit more. Again. The wheel is just off the ground at 7.5 millimeters. So just to verify, we move back over to this side. Just check this side again. Yep, 7.5. So now the front suspension has been balanced. The rear is coming up at equal amounts. So that is the suspension balance done. Okay, so now we've done tweak, we've checked the droop, and I've just shown you how to check your preloads and corner weight balance essentially without needing that tweak station. Now we've got that right. The car is balanced front to rear, left to right with all the suspension system, but in doing so, by adjusting those ride height screws to get that preload right, you'll find that by checking the ride height now, it's more than likely out. Okay, so this is where you go, oh damn, I have to do the whole thing again. Well, you don't. You just check it. For example, the front says 5.2, the rear 5, so that's out, that's no good. But the easy thing, because we spent all that time adjusting fine adjustments, getting all our preloads and ride heights corner to corner right, that means that's set now. If you simply want to adjust your ride height, you just make sure that you do both sides an equal amount, and the ratio stays the same, and the car will simply come up or go down. The spring rates stay the same. So that's how you do it. So for example, let's give that a eighth of a turn there, eighth of a turn there. There we go, 5.2 to 5.4. And if the front's still 5.2, I'm happy, which it is. It's 5.2, so that's fine. That's all you have to do. You'll find that by doing those the same rate, you're not going to bump any settings out, so don't be afraid to do that. Alright guys, so after teaching you what I've just been through with all the suspension, I've just put the car on the tweak station to check how it goes, and this is the rear, and it is absolutely perfect, where in most occasions that's miles out until you check your tweak and your preload. So that's perfect. So the theory, it's proven, it's correct, it works on most cars, well, every car that I've tried. So there we go. I'll just check the front as well, and I've just turned it around and checked the front, and the front is perfect. There we go. A nice, cheap, fast, easy way to check your preloading. Obviously that took a little bit of time, but that's because I'm teaching you. It takes me around 2 minutes to do the whole thing. So you guys will get faster at it. It's something you can do at the track without needing to set up a whole lot of stuff and not understand it. It's a really simple way to do it. And it is important with the way the car reacts on the track. You will get a good feel from the car turning right and left when the car's set up properly. So, all right, cheers guys.